Greetings, everybody. It's time to begin the Bible study. Today is the 22nd day of the month of February, 2014. And if I heard right earlier, it's the 21st day of the month of Adar, or I should say Adar 1, because we will have a second Adar this year. It is a leap year. And so we are coming up closer and closer to the feast of Passover this coming April. And so I thought I would, first of all, remind everybody that there's going to be a lunar eclipse on Passover this year, within the day or so of Passover. A blood red moon eclipse, and there's going to be another one on the Passover of 2015. There's also going to be a blood red moon eclipse during the Feast of Sukkot, or Tabernacles, this year, and another one in 2015 during the Feast of Sukkot. Now this is very interesting because Christ said, let's turn over to Luke chapter 21. Well, let's begin in Mark chapter 13. Mark chapter 13. Verse 24 in the Amplified Parallel Bible. It says, "But in those days, after the affliction and oppression and distress of that tribulation, the sun will be darkened and the moon and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great kingly power and glory, majesty and splendor." And in Matthew chapter 24, similarly, we read in verse 29, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not shed its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken." And in Joel, in the Old Testament, Joel chapter 2, God says in verse 30, well, let's go back to verse 28. Joel 2:28, and God says, "And afterward I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. Even upon the menservants and upon the maidservants, in those days I will pour out my spirit, and I will show signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. The sun shall be turned to darkness, and the moon to blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes." These blood red moon eclipses, that's what they're called, because the moon turns to a shade of red or blood color during these eclipses at certain times of the year, and in the fall and in the spring. And so we're having two sets of blood-red eclipses at Passover and the Feast of Sukkot, this year and next year. That is a phenomenal sign. It's a very rare occurrence. It won't happen again for the rest of this century. The last time it happened was 1967, 68, which was the date of the Six-Day War in Israel, when God miraculously intervened to give his people victory over the surrounding Arab Muslim states. And they recaptured the Temple Mount and the Golan Heights and the west bank of the Jordan River, or Samaria, ancient Samaria, and the old city of Jerusalem. And the last time before that was 50 years earlier, 30 years earlier, in 1948 and 49, at the founding of the State of Israel, when Israel became a nation, fulfilling prophecies that the Jews would once again dwell in Israel in the last days, prior to the coming of the Messiah. 1948, May 14 was when Israel became a nation. That year on Passover, there was a blood-red moon, and on Sukkot there was a blood-red moon, and the following year. That was a year of miracles. 1967 was a year of miracles and the recapture of the Temple Mount by the Jews. Now 2014 and 2015, I expect to see more miracles and God's intervention, and it's a warning of war. When Israel was declared a nation and acknowledged their independence, war broke out immediately with the surrounding Arab states. In 1967, the Six-Day War occurred after the blood-red moon of the Passover that year. It began in June 6 through 12, I think it was, or something like that. What's going to happen in 2014 and 15? Will war break out again? Will there be war with Iran? Will the Great Tribulation really commence in earnest? It appears to me the world has been flirting with the Great Tribulation now for the last few years, ever since Obama became president. And we've had the abomination of desolation sitting in the White House. And our foreign policy is turned topsy-turvy. And since this brief reign of this macabre person, America has lost Egypt as an ally, and Mubarak has been overthrown by the radical Muslim Brotherhood. The United States today is supporting the Muslim Brotherhood and allies of Al-Qaeda in fighting against Assad, the president of Syria. We are aiding and abetting our sworn enemies. It's mind-boggling to me. It's incredible. It shows that we have a traitor in our government, or many traitors in our government. They are persecuting Christians, and it's just beginning. The Muslim Brotherhood and the Al-Qaeda terrorist organizations in Syria today are massacring whole villages of Christians, cutting off their heads and selling their blood to Saudi perverts as good luck charms. It's incredible what's going on today and how America has been blinded and our people are totally asleep. Just as the curtain is ringing open and the sword of Damocles is beginning to fall, and we are entering the cusp of the Great Tribulation. the time of war, and the blood-red moons are a signal of war. And in Luke chapter 21, verse 25, again in the Amplified Version, it says, "And there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, and upon the earth there will be distress, trouble, and anguish of nations in bewilderment and perplexity, without resources, left wanting, embarrassed, in doubt, not knowing which way to turn, at the roaring, the echo of the tossing of the sea. Men swooning away or expiring with fear and dread and apprehension and expectation of the things that are coming on the earth. For the very powers of the heavens will be shaken and caused to totter." And, verse 27, "They will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with great transcendent and overwhelming power, and all his kingly glory, majesty, and splendor." And he says in verse 28, "For you and for me," for all his people. And then, now when these things begin to occur, and they are beginning now, he says, "Look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption, your deliverance, is drawing near." Over in the book of Isaiah, God also tells us of this time. Isaiah chapter 24. We read of similar signs in the earth, in the heavens, and the star, and the moon, stars, planets. Chapter 24 of Isaiah speaks about what we see around us today in the earth. Again, I'll read this in the Amplified Bible. Verse, let's begin in verse 10. "The wasted city of emptiness and confusion is broken down. Every house is shut up so that no one may enter. There's crying in the streets for wine. All joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is banished and gone into captivity. And the city is left desolation, and its gate is battered and destroyed. For so shall it be in the midst of the earth, among the peoples, as the shaking and beating of an olive tree, or as the gleaning when the vintage is done, and only a small amount of the fruit remains. But these who have escaped and remain lift up their voices. They shout for the majesty of the Lord. They cry aloud from the Mediterranean Sea. Wherefore, he says, glorify the Lord to the east, whether in the region of daybreak, lights and fires, or in the west. Glorify the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, in the isles and the coasts of the sea. He's speaking about the coming of the Messiah. The next verse says, verse 16, from the uttermost parts of the earth have we heard songs, glory to the righteous one, and to the people of Israel. But I say, Isaiah says, emaciated, I pine away, woe is me. The treacherous dealers deal treacherously, as it is in the world today. Yes, the treacherous dealers deal very treacherously today. It's unbelievable. It's mind-boggling. Terror and the pit of destruction and snare are upon you, O inhabitants of the earth. And he who flees at the noise of the terror will fall into the pit. And he who comes up out of the pit will be caught in the snare. For the windows of the heavens are opened as in the deluge, and the foundations of the earth tremble and shake in massive earthquakes. The earth is utterly broken, the earth is rent asunder, the earth is shaken violently. The earth shall stagger like a drunken man, and shall sway to and fro like a hammock. Its transgression shall lie heavily upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again. In that day the Lord will visit and punish the host of the high ones on high, the host of heaven in heaven, celestial beings, and the kings of the earth on the earth. And they will be gathered together as prisoners, are gathered in a pit or a dungeon, and they will be shut up in prison. And after many days they will be visited, inspected, and punished or pardoned, depending on their attitude and their repentance, if there is any. Verse 23 says, then the moon will be confounded, and the sun ashamed, when they compare their ineffectual fire to the light of the Lord of hosts, who will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and before his elders will show forth his glory. The sign of the blood-red moon tetrads, 2014 and 2015, when it ties in with all the other signs of the end times that we are now seeing, is something to be very aware of, to contemplate. Remember, Israel was founded in 1948, and Christ said, when you see these signs, this generation shall not pass away till all these things be fulfilled. And a biblical generation, as we read in Psalm 90, is 70 years. 1948 plus 70 years is 2018. These things are beginning to be fulfilled now. And these are signs. The prophecy of the blood-red moon tetrads. And there will be fearful sights and great signs from heaven. We read in Luke 21. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood. We read in Joel 2:31. And Revelation 6:12 says, I looked when he opened the sixth seal, that behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. Blood-red moons, I'm reading an article now, are when the moon appears red due to lunar eclipses. They occur when the earth is positioned between the sun and the moon, and the earth's shadow blocks the sun's light, which would normally reflect off the moon. The delicate layer of dusty air surrounding our planet reddens and redirects the light of the sun, filling the dark behind the earth with a sunset red glow. This is in contrast to a solar eclipse, where the moon is positioned between the earth and the sun, causing darkness. The article goes on, blood red lunar eclipses have happened continuously through history. But a blood moon tetrad is when 4 consecutive lunar eclipses, total eclipses, occur on a Jewish holy feast day. There have only been 7 such blood red moon tetrads between Christ's first coming 2,000 years ago and this year. Every time they happened, it has been proven that there was some significant event which impacted the Jewish people on earth within a year of the first or the last eclipse of the tetrad. This last upcoming tetrad is going to be the 8th. And the number 8 is a symbol of a new beginning. There were 8 people in the ark of Noah who were saved over into the new world after the flood. The 8th day is the day after the 7th day Sabbath, which begins a new week. And we could go on, but the number 8 means a new beginning. It is also a symbol of the name of the Messiah. In Greek, the Greek language, Jesus, if you take the numerical value of the Greek letters of his name, they are 888, which is 888, which means a new beginning. Also, you take a look at that number 8, what does it look like? Well, Cappy says 2 circles, but no. It looks like the infinity sign. The infinity sign. The infinity sign is normally laid flat, but it looks like a figure 8. Stands for infinity. So this new tetrad, the 8th such tetrad since the first coming of Christ, pictures the second coming of Christ and the beginning of the kingdom of God, or infinity, eternity, the new age. It's a predecessor, a harbinger of the kingdom of God and the millennial reign of Christ and the coming of the Messiah. I think this is absolutely very significant. And it shows that we are living in the time of the end. There are other prophecies that show the same thing. But I want to go now to in the book of poetry. If I can find the one I'm looking for here. It's a poem called The Second Coming. And it's in this book of poetry. Well, here it is. I'm just spending my time leafing through the pages. Here we go. It's page 882 of Bartlett's Familiar Quotations. It's from a poem called The Second Coming. I want to read this to you and just meditate on it as I read it. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born? That is a poem written for our days, like a prophetic poem. Speaking of the Great Tribulation, the beast of Revelation, the world descending into anarchy and iniquity, the cesspool of wickedness overflowing, and the judgment of God coming upon the earth. The time has come, the time is here, the time is upon us. You might say the day we've been waiting for is drawing closer and closer and closer. So I want to talk about the signs of the news as they are developing around us. I don't know how much time I'm going to have or how far I'm going to get on these shocking items.
16 minutes.
Oh, come on. Don't tell me about that. I don't want to know how much time it is. That's the disruption. Well, first of all, the Prophetic Observer by Noah Hutchings is entitled, for the month of February, this month, "A Sad Thing Happened on the Road to Sodom." It's a catchy title. It's talking about America today and the Western world. We are on the road to Sodom. Oklahoma City U.S. District Judge Terrence Kern ruled on Tuesday that Oklahoma's ban on same-sex marriage is unconstitutional. That's flabbergasting. The U.S. Constitution says nothing about marriage or gay marriage, but it gives the states the rights to write their own laws. And Oklahoma passed a law banning same-sex marriage, and this idiot of a judge says it's unconstitutional. Everything today is topsy-turvy. Black is called white, white is called black, sweet is sour, sour is sweet. Pickles are sweet. I don't mean sweet pickles. Sweet pickles are sour. Everything is reversed today. We're living down the rabbit hole of Alice in Wonderland. The Muslims believe like the Queen of Hearts. Off with their heads. And they're chopping off the heads of all their enemies in Muslim nations around the world. Africa, the Middle East, Asia. This opinion of this judge was handed down as part of a lawsuit filed in 2004 by two lesbian couples in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They filed the lawsuit in 2004 after Oklahoma voters overwhelmingly passed State Question 711, which defined marriage as a union of one man and one woman, just like the Bible says. just like the Word of God says. But this judge has turned it around and declared it unconstitutional. Well, the U.S. federal government's position under President Obama on homosexuality in marriage is anti-constitutional, anti-American, anti-moral, and anti-biblical, anti-God and anti-Christ, and anti-everything that is decent and socially foundational. We are on the road to Sodom and Gomorrah. And God is no respecter of persons or cities or nations. He punished ancient Sodom and Gomorrah with heavenly fire descending from the skies and a fiery holocaust. And He will punish America and the world today for embracing and engulfing itself with homosexuality, which is an abomination in the sight of a holy God. In another article in the same newsletter, the Prophetic Observer, it says, Antichrist System Taking Shape by Dr. David Schnitger. And he says that the kind of technology we have today, control is implicit and requisite in the coming Antichrist economic system, described in Revelation 13, where everybody receives a mark in their foreheads or in their hands, so that no one might buy or sell unless they have the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name, unless they are part of the system that is coming. John Whitehead, president of the Rutherford Institute, wrote an article on January 6, 2014, entitled Life in the Electronic Concentration Camp. The electronic concentration camp. The many ways that you're being tracked, cataloged, and controlled. People don't realize it today, but Big Brother, the government, is snooping into everything in your life. Your health care, your bank accounts, your bedrooms. They have listening devices and monitoring devices on more and more gadgets and technology, things you find in your home that are being sold today, including television sets, refrigerators, telephones, other appliances. Anything electronic could be bugged. And then those bugs can be filed away in the data holding centers in Utah. Whitehead cataloged a variety of ways Americans are now being tracked and cataloged and controlled by the government in a, quote, police state, unquote. He defines the police state as follows. By police state, he says, I am referring to more than a society overrun by the long arm of the police. I am referring to a society in which all aspects of a person's life are policed by government agents, one in which all citizens are suspects, their activities monitored and regulated, their movements tracked, their communications spied on, and their lives and liberties and pursuit of happiness are dependent on the government's say-so. He calls it the electronic concentration camp. They're tracking you based on your consumer activities. They're tracking you based upon your public activities. They're tracking you based upon your telephone activities. They're tracking you based upon your computer activities. They're tracking you based on your behavior. They're tracking you based upon your facial characteristics. Facial recognition software promises to create a society in which every individual who steps out into public is tracked and recorded as they go about their daily business. Big Brother is watching you. Big Brother is spying on you. Like George Orwell's 1984. He should have titled it 2014. He was only a few decades off, but now we're living in the Big Brother society. Tracking you from the skies, he says. Nothing, and I mean nothing, will escape government eyes, especially when drones take to the skies in 2015 over America. These gadgets, ranging from the colossal to the miniature, some are the size of bumblebees or hummingbirds, will have the capability of seeing through the walls of your home and tracking your every moment. To put it bluntly, Whitehead said, we are living in an electronic concentration camp. Through a series of imperceptible steps, we have willingly allowed ourselves to be enmeshed in a system that knows the most intimate details of our lives and analyzes them and treats us accordingly. Thus, we have arrived in Orwell's world. The question is, will we take a stand and fight to remain free, or will we go gently into the concentration camp? Well, we are there, fast, rapidly approaching that day of 2015, the second year of the blood red moons. Now, the Prophetic News Service is another service that we subscribe to, and they tell us, and they quote briefly an article by Daniel Pipes back in November 12, 2008. And he says something here relevant to a tall black man. A prophecy by a Muslim cleric, Ali ibn Abi Talib, the 7th century figure central to Shiite Islam. It's back in the 600s AD. He is said to have predicted when the world will end, and columnist Ami Tahir points out, a tall black man, he said, commanding the strongest army on earth, will take power in the West. He will carry a clear sign from the third Imam of the Shiite Muslim faith, whose name was Hussein. Ali says of the tall black man, quote, Shiites should have no doubt that he is with us, unquote. Now, this is another thing which is mind-boggling. The name Barack Obama in Arabic means the blessing of Hussein. I'm sorry, I said Obama. The name Barack Hussein in Arabic means the blessing of Hussein. Barak is blessing. Hussein is the name of this Muslim imam. Barak Hussein is named after a Muslim imam, the Shiite Hussein. In Persian language, the name Obama translates as "He is with us." Obama means He is with us. So, the blessing of Hussein, He is with us. A tall black man in the West governing the largest army, military forces on earth. Therefore, does the name of the American president, when combined with his physical attributes and geography, black and West, suggest that the end of times is near? Precisely what Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, when he was the president, kept predicting. Here's another frightening news item. 13,000 teenagers have just completed the Hamas training camps to learn how to be suicide martyrs. They're training to become suicide martyrs. 13,000 teenagers. This was in the Times of Israel, January 15, 2014. The Hamas government in the Gaza Strip, modern-day Gaza, celebrated the graduation on Monday of paramilitary camps geared at training high school children, quote, to follow in the footsteps of the suicide martyrs, unquote. The camps are titled the Pioneers of Liberation. They're run by Hamas's Ministries of Education and the Interior. Some 13,000 students in grades 10 through 12 participated in the one-week training camps this year. 5,000 participated last year when the program was launched. The instructors in these camps mainly consist of active members of Hamas's security forces. 13,000 new suicide bombers being prepared to blow themselves up in public places to destroy Jews and enemies of Islam. And who do they hate the most? They call Israel the little Satan, and they call America the big Satan. And many of these Hamas and jihadists have been infiltrating the United States across our southern border coming from Mexico. Oh, by the way, did you know that our president's birth certificate is a forgery? That there is no evidence, no proof that he was born in Hawaii, but all the evidence indicates he was born in Kenya, like his Kenyan relatives all say. And there's a placard in Kenya, a monument attesting that Obama was born here at the site, at the village where he was born. Well, now we know that his birth certificate is an absolute fraud, a forgery. Here's the proof. We elected a liar and a fraud to be president. This is the Minority Report blog, January 15, 2013. Back in 1961, people who were of color were called Negroes. So, how can the Obama birth certificate say he's African American? That term wasn't even used in those days. The birth certificate says that the White House released says Obama's birth was August 4, 1961. And his father was Barack Hussein Obama. Was that a big deal? Well, at the time of Obama's birth, it also says his father was 25 years of age, and his father was born in Kenya, East Africa. That's what the birth certificate shows. What's wrong with that? Well, the article says it wouldn't seem like anything of concern except the fact that Kenya did not exist until 1963, 2 whole years after Obama was born, and 27 years after his father was born. It wasn't Kenya there, so the birth certificate's wrong. How can they call it Kenya when it wasn't called Kenya until 27 years later? That's mind-boggling. Everything I'm saying today is mind-boggling. In 1963, Kenya was known as British East Africa Protectorate. So that's what the birth certificate should have said, British East Africa Protectorate. You can check it out yourself on Wikipedia. Then the White House listed the place of birth as Kapiolani Maternity and Gynecological Hospital in Hawaii. That's what the birth certificate says. But this cannot be so. The hospital in question in 1961 was called Kapiolani Children's Hospital. A totally different name. And Kapiolani Maternity Home, respectively. The name did not change to Kapiolani Maternity and Gynecological Hospital until 1978, when these two hospitals merged together. So how can that particular name of the hospital be on a birth certificate dated 1961? In other words, that name became the name of the hospital in 1978, 17 years after he was born. So he could not have been born in that hospital with that name. Another lie. Liar, liar, pants on fire. I think one of these days we're going to see some people have a very, very hot seat as they sit in flames. Why hasn't this fact been discussed in the major media? The media in America are not just lamestream media, they're superficial media. They're brainless media. They're bought and paid for, sold out media. They're weaklings, cowards, unwilling to speak the truth. Then the article says perhaps a clue comes from Obama's book on his father. He states how proud he is of his father fighting in World War II. The author says, I'm not a math genius, so I may need some help with on this. Barack Obama's birth certificate says his father was 25 years old in 1961 when Obama was born. That should have put his father's date of birth about 1936. And he says, if my math holds, honest, I did that without a calculator. So now we need a non-revised history book, one that hasn't been altered to satisfy the author's goals, to verify that World War II was basically began 1939 and 1945. So how many 3-year-olds were fighting in World War II? Obama's proud of his father, who fought as a soldier in World War II. 3 years old. Wow. How much fighting can a 3-year-old do? How many 3-year-olds fight in wars? Even in the latest stages of World War II, his father couldn't have been more than 9 years old. Does that mean that Mr. Obama is a liar? Or just chooses to alter the facts to satisfy his imagination or for political purposes? I tell you, it is mind-boggling. It's unbelievable. Well, we know that Obama's foreign policies are shredding to pieces, becoming just tatters. His mucking around in the Middle East has lost us Egypt as an ally. Egypt is now anti-Obama, anti-U.S., and now Russia is completing a $2 billion armaments deal for Egypt, funded by the Gulf states. They don't trust Obama anymore. As far as they're concerned, we're history. Another news item, the United States Post Office has released an acquisition notice for ammunition manufacturing contracts. The Post Office wants to purchase ammunition for guns. What for? Are they going to be used in the New World Order to patrol their own post offices? Why does the post office need weapons and ammunition? But Homeland Security is amassing billions of rounds of ammunition as well. It's enough to shoot every American 5 or 6 times and still have some left over. Another sign of the times, a former federal regulator revealed that in 2013 there was a gun attack on a Northern California electrical substation. A very coordinated attack, very well reasoned out and led by professionals. And he worries that this may have been a dress rehearsal for a broader assault on the U.S. power grid, which could cause a massive blackout in much or all of America. Our enemies are getting ready, and the Iranians say they are ready to bring us down. If we attack them, they will attack us, and they have agents already in place in America. Then the world stands on the brink of an economic horror fest, a cataclysmic economic collapse. A sign of that, perhaps as a sign of that, is the fact that another J.P. Morgan banker has leaped to his death in recent weeks, 7 or 8 bankers have committed suicide or leaked to their death or died under mysterious circumstances. This is a J.P. Morgan Forex trader leaping to his death from the top of the firm's Chater House headquarters in Hong Kong. Over the past several weeks, at least 7 bankers have died under mysterious circumstances. Now, another J.P. Morgan senior manager jumped off the top of a skyscraper in London last month. Speculation is rife. The article says that the series of deaths are connected in some kind of way with the looming financial crisis. Chater House is J.P. Morgan's main regional office in Asia. Young He becomes the 7th banker to suddenly die in recent weeks. On January 26th, a former Deutsche Bank executive, Brockschmidt, was found dead in his home, found hanging in the house. Gabriel McGee, a 39-year-old senior manager at J.P. Morgan's European headquarters, jumped 500 feet from the top of the bank's headquarters in central London, January 27. Mike Duker, chief economist at Russell Investments, fell down a 50-foot embankment or cliff in what police are saying was a suicide. He was missing on January 29 by friends. And then Richard Talley, 57 years of age, founder of the American Title Services in Centennial, Colorado, was also found dead earlier this month after apparently shooting himself with a nail gun. And if I remember right, they said he was shot with about 6 or 8 nails. How can you keep doing that? How many times can you shoot yourself with a nail gun before you die and can't shoot yourself anymore? Was that a suicide, or was that maybe have another explanation? Maybe someone didn't like him. And then 37-year-old J.P. Morgan executive Brian Henry Crane died last week. And Tim Dickerson, a UK-based communications director at Swiss REAG, died last month. The circumstances of his death are unknown. But why are so many bankers committing suicide? Is that a harbinger, an omen? Maybe they just can't deal with what they see is coming down the road, down the pike, down the train track. Well, another scary item is the conflict now is growing in the Far East between China, Red China, Communist China, and the island nation of Japan. China is bursting at the seam. They want to expand their influence, their power throughout Asia and the world. And they are arguing and fighting over a island area off the Philippine Islands, which has been a disputed territory for generations. And now they're claiming island Japan says belongs to them. And Japan is now preparing for war with China. In Okinawa, Japanese officials met with representatives from the 10 member states of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Japan and the ASEAN nations discussed joint cooperation in response to natural disasters and anti-terrorism. But Japan's parliamentary Vice Minister of Defense revealed the true nature of the meeting was to bolster the defenses against China in her attempt to change the status quo of Asia by force. President Obama tried to attend that meeting and his government, and they were rebuffed, and they were told they were not wanted. So in humiliation, he had to do something else instead. As I recall, they actually went there thinking they would barge in and crash the party, but no party crashers were allowed. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe wants to deepen his nation's cooperation with ASEAN, A-S-E-A-N, the 10 member states of that association of Southeast Asia. Japan is currently looking to ease its policy on arms exports, a clear indication that the island nation is taking the threat of war with China seriously. The ASEAN Association consists of Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Brunei, Burma, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. In December, a former Chinese ambassador to the United States, Xia Zukang, said that the current territorial dispute between China and Japan over the Senkaku Islands could lead to World War III. If China started a war with Japan, he said to the China Times, it would lead to it would be much larger than both the Sino-Japanese War and World War II. World War III could begin in the Far East, a war between China and Japan. At this same time, as tensions are rising in the Orient, Japan is revising sections of its constitution, which presently limits its military activities. And Japan is reportedly ramping up its nuclear weapons capabilities to develop nuclear weapons for its defense. China, on the other hand, plans to build 4 aircraft carriers in the next several years, including a nuclear-powered one. And according to Paul Joseph Watson in Infowars.com, Japan is secretly developing nuclear weapons. February 18, 2014. Asia Weekly, a Hong Kong-based news outlet, is reporting that Japan is secretly developing a nuclear weapons program in response to increasing hostilities with China over the East China Sea dispute. According to the report, paraphrased by the One China Times, with the capability to build at least 2,000 nuclear warheads, Japan has recently demanded the United States return 300 kilograms of plutonium. I wonder if we are going to do it. The article notes that Mitsubishi, Hitachi, and Toshiba, names we're all familiar with on our electronics, computers, and television sets, which we get from Japan, they all possess expertise in the area of nuclear energy, and along with 200 other small companies could all be called upon to kickstart a nuclear weapons program. Japan already has over 40 tons of plutonium in its possession. And it only takes about 20 kilos of plutonium for a nuclear bomb. And they've got 40 tons of it. Major General Yoshiaki Yano of the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force are also calling on Tokyo to adjust its nuclear policy. Japan, let's see, this story arrives hot on the heels of a report that China is extremely concerned about Japan's initial resistance of handing back weapons-grade plutonium to the United States, which was bought back in the 1960s for so-called research purposes. But it has the potential to be turned into 50-year nuclear bombs. Earlier this year, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe announced that within the next 6 years, Japan would revise its pacifist constitution, which limits its military activities to self-defense. Well, I think that's enough of that article. Another article I have talks about the President Obama now has his own personal defense force. They call it President Barack Obama's Personal Police Force. This is Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC. It's on standby to engage American citizens in big cities and country communities. The JSOC originally numbered in the dozens, but now it's 25,000 members strong. The JSOC soldier told the Washington Post, quote, "We're the dark matter. We're the force that orders the universe, but can't be seen," end of quote. Personal private army, like Hitler's brown shirts in the Third Reich in Nazi Germany. But this is President Barack Obama's personal police force, 25,000 strong, today in America. We are the inheritor of the Nazi birthright. Our government is becoming increasingly Nazi-oriented. And this police force is like the Stasi or Gestapo of Nazi Germany. Says this article in Personal Digest, the real purpose of the JSOC may be to deal with the millions of Americans who may revolt after years of suffering, a sick economy, and an onrushing, calamitous financial crisis. Many Americans who were once blind are now opening their eyes and can see. They recognize that the Emperor, Barack Obama, has no clothes. They know the President ruefully ignores the Constitution. How far will Obama go? The only logical answer is that his administration will bring any force necessary to protect his vision of what America should be, his vision, not your vision or my vision. The trigger for him to unleash his forces and to clamp down with martial law would be, for example, a financial collapse, which may be imminent. Again, forecast by the blood red moon tetrad, signals in the heavens. God knows what's going to happen, and He gives us warnings. And these are heavenly signs. What greater warning could we have? The trigger could be the financial collapse beginning with the Dow Jones and ending with the collapse of the dollar, where the dollar becomes like the Zimbabwe money or like monopoly money. The process is already set in motion. Neither all of Obama's horses nor all of his men can restore our financial system again. Humpty Dumpty is sitting on the wall, teetering, ready to fall. And when he does, there will be a splat. And our economy will be toast. Or like scrambled eggs on the sidewalk. Raw eggs. Global Research, another news source, reported in October and said reports are that the Department of Homeland Security, called the DHS, is engaged in a massive covert military buildup. An article in the Associated Press in February confirmed an open purchase order by DHS for 1.6 billion rounds of ammunition. According to an op-ed article in Forbes magazine, that's enough to sustain an Iraq-sized war for over 20 years. DHS has also acquired heavily armored tanks, which have been seen roaming the streets. Evidently, somebody in government is expecting some serious civil unrest. The question is, why? The answer is obvious, he says. Only due to massive federal spending and the infusion of trillions of fiat dollars by the Federal Reserve did the U.S. economy not collapse in 2008 or 2009. But the Fed and the Federal Reserve and the government only bought themselves more time. They didn't solve the problems. They just kicked the can down the road. And now it's 2014. During this time, they recruited the JSOC to deal with American unrest. If you think I'm being outrageous, the man says, then consider recent history. And the recent history is this. Damian McBride, in his book Power Trip, said that former British Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, had his hand next to the red phone, ready to call out troops during the financial collapse of 2008. This is in Great Britain. McBride, who was a special economic advisor to the Prime Minister, quoted Brown as saying, "If the banks are shutting their doors and the cash points aren't working and people go to Tesco and their cards aren't being accepted, the whole thing will just explode. If you can't buy food or petrol, gasoline, or medicine for your kids, people will just start breaking the windows and helping themselves. And as soon as people see that happening on television, that's the end. Because everyone will think it's okay now. That's just what we all have to do. It will be anarchy. That's what could happen tomorrow." So, Personal Digest goes on, if a recent prime minister of Great Britain was ready to point bayonets at the people who elected him back in 2008, 2009, then it stands to reason that Obama has already planned to do the same. It no longer seems to be a question of if, but rather when or how soon. How soon will it be before troops are patrolling our streets? If we have a stock market crash, and it's already been going down steadily the last few weeks, it no longer, rather than I think he says that the collapse will be sooner rather than later. How can an American president fail to warn the public of an economic impending Pearl Harbor or disaster, an economic Hiroshima? The answer is he doesn't want to press the panic button. At least not until the JSOC is ready and operative and other military forces are poised to respond and assert control of the population. The financial system today, he says, is hanging by a thread. That is an irrefutable statement. We are on the verge, on the edge, on the cusp of the greatest financial fall in history. The Dow Jones dead average, he says, will soon crumble. In 1981, the Dow stood around 1,000. Today it stands at nearly 16,000. Do most Americans feel like they're 16 times richer and wealthier today than they did 33 years ago? Are you 16 times wealthier today? For anyone except a Wall Street financier, the answer would be no. And why are they so wealthy? Because they got bailed out by Bush and Obama. Unemployment levels that our president so often brags about are hinged on millions of Americans who no longer are looking for work. So they're not counted as unemployed because they gave up. Millions have quit looking for work. Under Obama's leadership, America's financial system is nothing more than cardboard, he says. It supports shockingly overpriced stock market values, a dysfunctional banking system, and a U.S. dollar that's itself on the brink. One whisper of adversity could bring it all tumbling down, like Humpty Dumpty. This, he says, leaves us with the greatest challenges any generation of Americans has ever faced. Martial law will follow as surely as red, black, and pale follow the white horse in the book of Revelation, the four horsemen of the apocalypse. That's written by John Myers of Personal Digest or Personal Liberty, rather, .com. And he says, on January 29, investors pulled $6 billion from emerging market funds, the largest outflow on record. Latin American currencies today are collapsing. Peter Schiff, who predicted the 2007 collapse in August 2006, way before almost anybody else saw it coming, says we're now headed for a worse economic crisis than we had in 2007. The crisis is imminent, Schiff said. I don't think Obama is going to finish his second term without the bottom dropping out. And stock market investors are oblivious to the problems. Except I understand a lot of the rich and wealthy stock market investors are withdrawing their funds. And that is why the stock market's been having trouble staying up lately. Schiff says we're broke. We owe trillions. Look at our budget deficit. Look at the debt to GDP ratio, the unfunded liabilities. If we were in the Eurozone, they would kick us out. Schiff says the market gains experienced recently with the Dow first topping 17,000 on its way to setting record highs are now giving investors a false sense of security. He says it's not that the stock market is gaining any value, it's that our money is losing value. The worth of the dollar is going down. And if you have a debased currency, a devalued currency, the price of everything goes up. Stocks are no exception. The Fed knows the U.S. economy is not recovering, he said. It is simply being kept from collapse by artificially low interest rates and quantitative easing. When that support goes, the economy will implode. It'll shrink it'll just collapse like a burst balloon. The article goes on, please remember that in the coming inflation, food stamps and all U.S. entitlement programs will come to a complete halt. If you're on food stamps, you better look out. You better make preparation to do something else, like get a good job, one that'll last, or learn to be self-sufficient. He says, my friends, you will get your money all right, but it will be so worthless, it won't buy anything. So what else is new? You ain't seen nothing yet, he says. Be alert. Can it be stopped short of collapse? Is the U.S. dollar collapsing? If stopped now, the quantitative easing and the printing of money by the Fed, if they stopped it now, it would cause it to collapse even sooner. What do we mean? We mean that we have passed the point of no return. There's too much fraud, too much debt in the United States. The end is in sight. How long do we have, he says? It appears to me that we are very close to economic and social collapse. Times can yet wobble along for months or even a few years. It is certainly a certainty that things will get visibly worse in many ways, especially now that the end game is here. We don't have to wait much longer. The end game, the end of the game, the end of this age is here. Interesting article here. Half of those who have enrolled in Obamacare now still owe their premiums. They've enrolled, but they haven't paid for it. And they probably won't. Maybe they can't. Our economy today is being steered by a ship of fools, says John Morgan. While the Washington establishment looks the other way and pretends calamity is not around the corner, the Federal Reserve has been doubling down on all the perilous risks that caused the 2008 financial meltdown. Monetary policy has grown so manipulative and large that it is nearly impossible to predict the direction of financial markets in 2014. The government itself is buying stocks and bonds, creating a great vulnerability, and they are blindly ignoring the warning signs that we should have learned back in 2008. Intelligent people would say we should proceed with great caution. But we are not. We are recklessly spending our ways into oblivion. And on top of this, we have the worst drought in history now occurring in the western United States, and especially the state of California, our breadbasket state of the nation. And another article that I have here, it says, it has begun. Wise up and stock up now as food shortages and price hikes are coming before this year's end. California is in the midst of a drought so severe that domestic supplies may be cut off in a matter of weeks. Supplies of water. Florida farmers are looking at massive losses due to cold weather, ruining not just citrus crops, but also squash, cucumbers, and herbs. Wheat growth in Texas is stunted. And overseas, the problems are also bad in Peru, Venezuela, Bolivia, Ecuador. Flooded fields have rotted the crops where they were planted. Parts of Australia are in drought. Did you know that the U.S. food supply, the state that produces the most vegetables of any other state, is going through the worst drought it's ever experienced? And the size of the U.S. cattle herd today is the smallest it's ever been since 1951. Just the other day, a CBS News article boldly declared that food prices will soar as incomes stand still. And this is just the beginning. You add this threat of drought and weather disturbances and disorder to the financial crisis in Washington and the markets. It's time to batten down the hatches and get ready for the hurricane. It's time to realize the great tribulation is coming. It's around the corner. In fact, it's virtually here. And the blood-red moon seemed to be a final sign of coming calamity on Israel. And we are Israel. We are the house of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, America and Great Britain. It's time to wake up. It's time to get ready. It's time to prepare. It's time to take it seriously. It's time to say, even so, come, Lord Jesus. Come and save us. Hosanna. Amen.